I'm so deeply honored and grateful that you're joining me for a fresh approach to painting, Gateway to the Inner Artist. Pour Me Too. We're going to paint Nature's Perfection, a painting that has been published widely, actually worldwide. And that is using acrylic resin. Now it's not actual resin like in the 1970s we had tables that we poured plastic coating in and then put pennies in it. You might remember seeing a few of those, and I think on the beach you'll often see tables still made from that product. With the recipe that I'm going to give you today, you're going to be able to use a mixture of mediums to pour a painting and end up with a smooth, beautiful finish. If you studied your art history, you know that artists, famous artists like John Bowling in the 1960s, were pouring long before we ever thought of it now in our current day. He actually went through the process of developing his own pouring machine. A friend of mine knew that I was pouring, and I went to him. He creates beautiful woodwork, and asked him, could you create a pouring machine for me? He went through the process of making this machine for me. It comes apart in several pieces so that I can travel with it, and these sides move. It's just so creative. So the legs drop down when I'm ready to pour. I place my canvas on top, and I can actually do the pouring process. Could this have been similar to what John Bowling created in the 1960s to assist him with his pouring process? This product emulates resin, so yes, unlike using paint to pour, we are using mostly medium to pour. This pouring method uses an acrylic medium product, not liquid paint. So it's going to be gooey and can be messy. That's why preparation before you even think of beginning is so important. We're going to make our paint. I've got an oven sheet to catch my drips. I'm going to put push pins on the bottom of my canvas that I'm going to be using. Now these push pins go right into the wooden part of the canvas, and they create a stand. So when I'm done pouring on this canvas, I can easily set it down. So here's the secret recipe. Are you ready? You take 50% gloss medium varnish from Liquitex and 50% pouring medium. Now, you're probably asking, well, why don't you just use the pouring medium? So I took a couple years in looking at different recipes to create a self-leveling product that emulates resin. And this is what I've come up with. By using the gloss medium and varnish, and not just the pouring medium, you're going to end up with a smooth finish to your painting. So I'm pouring the glazing medium, and I'm pouring the pouring medium, 50-50. Taking a simple popsicle stick, mixing it up, and now I'm going to put color in. It doesn't take a lot of color. You can use almost any color, like heavy body, soft body, Liquitex paint. You can even use some of the fluid paints, just so you get the exact color that you're looking for. So I'm going to squeeze in some of this Naples yellow. It's one of my most important colors in creating a beach. And then I'm going to stir it up, and it will end up yellow. Another handy dandy tool is a spatula. You can take and mix your paint thoroughly. And you do want to have your paint mixture mixed thoroughly. I use these small plastic containers that I purchased from the dollar store to make the mixture for a smaller painting. If you're making a large pouring, then these jars work perfectly, these mason jars. Regardless of what container you use, always, because remember, this medium is like glue and it will seal your container and you won't be able to get back into it. So take some petroleum jelly and rub it on the outside of your jar or your small container, inside and outside, and also on the edge of your lid. Then you will always be able to open the containers that hold your acrylic pouring medium. Now, this is about a year old, so you can see that if you have a nice sealed jar, you can just shake it up when you're ready to use it, and it will last that long. The next bottles that we're going to pre-make for our pouring process are the Darcy bottles. Now I call them Darcy bottles because Darcy is a manufacturer. You can use any plastic bottle, but the important thing is that it has a point, not a metal point, because your acrylic medium will not pour out of a metal point. I know they use that metal point for some watercolor projects, but remember, you're working with acrylic, which is a thicker product. So how do we make our Darcy bottles or our needle nose bottle? We take and put airbrush medium, this is golden airbrush medium, with water and the paint color of our choice inside our bottle. I'm using white in this case. And then you cover it up. You shake it well. Then take the lid off and with a scissors cut a diagonal so that you have a pencil point. You will be drawing with this bottle. I'm going to take petroleum jelly, put some on my hands, and just rub that around. Now, why am I doing that? Because this product is very sticky, and if I get some on my hands, it will be hard to get off. The other thing you could do is actually use gloves, but I don't like to use gloves. I like to feel what I'm doing. Now I'm using the canvas that I put the pins in. It's ready to go. So it's not pour a lot of paint onto a canvas and hope something emerges and then you intuitively know, oh gee, that's a tree or a flower. We are going to pour with purpose. So the first thing I'm going to pour is my sky. I'm going to pick up my white. I've made sure that my containers are mixed thoroughly. I'm going to pick up a bit of light permanent. I'm going to move my white over to the edge. Just move this acrylic medium that you've created over to one side or the other. Because when you tip it, it's all going to run. And yes, you do want to cover the entire canvas. You don't want to have any loose edges. So see, I am letting this pour off the sides. I'm going to pour some more blue. We've got a nice, beautiful sky. It's a blue sky. A little more white. Whoops, that's okay. See what I mean about it can be messy? All right, make sure I'm going off my edges. You don't get a second chance to go off the edge. Well, I shouldn't say that. You can actually pour over this, and I'm going to show you how you can make a second layer. But right now, we're trying to get the entire top portion covered with one pour. Now see how I have this hole in the center? That hole will remain. So it does self-level, meaning it does fill in to a degree, but not that much. So what do I need to do? Well, I need to add just a little more paint / medium, and then let it pour. I'm not pouring it into the hole. I'm actually pouring it just before the hole and then moving the paint. Now, if I had that wooden machine that I showed you earlier, I could be doing the same thing I'm doing with my hands. Now, I use that machine for larger pieces because it would be, think about it, it'd be impossible to hold a huge canvas with your hands and move it at the same time. It might take a couple people. Okay, now I'm looking at this and I'm saying, oh, I ended up with a beautiful blue streak through my white sky. I think I want just a little bit more blue. So I'm going to start on this side and I'm going to mix the blue in with the sky by just the movement with my hand, kind of like watching paint dry. This is not drying. This actually, you're going to have to let this dry overnight to have it completely dry. I need just a little more white to fill in my holes. Sky holes are great while you're painting, but not for the pouring process. So now you can see that I have gone ahead and let that paint pour off the edges all the way. Now, it's time for my light blue. My lighter color is down around my horizon line. So I'm going to now introduce another color. While this is still wet, I'm introducing my blue. That's not moving fast enough, so I'll add a little more white. This is where your creative process, your creative juices come into play. Now, that's moving fast. I'm going to move this down. You can see. Now I have blue, I have light permanent blue, and I have a beautiful robin's egg blue. That is my violet. So I'm constantly moving my canvas around because I can, and because it's a small canvas. You need to master this skill before you move into larger canvases. Let's see how when the color pours down the canvas, it actually blends itself. Absolutely beautiful. But I want it to go all the way from one side to the other. And I'm going to tilt it slightly. I still have a hole there. I don't want to have holes. So I'm going to fill in my hole by movement of my hand. There. Now I've got this whole section completely covered. And I'm just going to let it drip right off the edge of the canvas. Now, that is exactly the way I want it. A beautiful sky. I'm ready for my water. So I've got a thin layer of water, and I'm going to use my phthalo blue mixture. I've learned the hard way that I have to limit the amount of blue that I use in this instance, because it will spread out. Let that pour right down. Oops, see, I touched it. But because I have Vaseline on my hands, it didn't stick to me. So that you'll learn to use this product. This oven tray is very helpful because it's a nice wide surface for my drips, to catch my drips. I ended up, had a little accident. I have a dot of blue, if you see. I have a little bit of blue water in my sky. I didn't intend this green dot in the middle of my sky. So how do I fix that? Well, I'm going to take some white and some of my light permanent blue that I used in my sky and blend that right out. So that's how you fix an accident. And again, this is planned. It's not haphazard. So your painting is a planned experience. And just keep moving it around until all your holes are completely covered. It will self-level to a degree. So this will move around once you set it down to dry. And since you have your push pins, you can set it ready for your beach. So we don't use brushes, because if you used a brush with this acrylic medium, it would be ruined. A popsicle stick is the perfect tool to help you move the paint if you need to. Now, because this is pouring, we don't want to be moving the paint too much. But if for some reason you need to move some paint and you don't know how to do it, use a popsicle stick. Okay, so now I've got my sky in exactly the way I want it. I let that dry a little bit till it was tacky. And then I put my water in. I'm going to pick up my white that I pre-made in my Darcy bottle. And because it has a pointed tip, I can actually draw with it. So I'm going to tilt, and I'm going to put some daubs all the way across my water. Pick up my popsicle stick, and I'm going to shape that white by making horizontal movements across my canvas. Because I've made it across the green, yep, you've probably figured out what it is. I'm going to pick up and I'm going to move that white right off the canvas. Let that come right off the edge, because when I lay it flat and it dries, it's going to create waves in my ocean. Okay, so perfect. It's exactly the way I want it. If it wasn't how I wanted it, I could add a little more green. This is entirely up to you, and this is where your creativity, your personal creativity, comes in. I'm ready for my beach. I'm going to use Portrait Pink, and just like I did my sky, I'm going to pour some Portrait Pink right along the water. I want the water and the beach to blend slightly. I'm going to add a little more white. You can see white is important. But this is not the white from the Darcy bottle. This is the white that I used in my sky. Now, why don't I use that same white in my Darcy bottle? Because that is made with, the one in the Darcy bottle is made with the airbrush medium, and that's going to give me a different consistency to my paint, or my pouring paint. So again, I've got a little hole over here. What do? I just move my canvas so that that hole fills in. Now notice that your waves are moving. You want to tilt them again to make sure they don't get too wide. Okay, back and forth and back and forth. Now I'm ready for my yellow. Turn my canvas around. I'm going to start from this side. You don't have to. I'm just doing that. Now I'm getting it on my hand. Because I have petroleum jelly on my hands, it's not sticking. By using a mixture of the portrait pink and the yellow, I'm getting a variegated beach. And I like the look of that. Now as I'm tilting this, I'm watching my white waves because I don't want them to get out of control. I will continue moving this canvas around until all the white is covered. You can do this in phases so that each color will dry, but you won't get the overlap. You won't get that really cool, exciting look, like see where the green is underneath the pink and the yellow. This medium is transparent, and someone asked me, one of my students asked me a question, what if I painted the base, didn't start with a white canvas? What if I started with a blue or purple canvas? Of course, this is your creative self coming through with these great ideas. But remember when you do that, that this medium, even though you're mixing color with it, is transparent. So whatever is underneath it is going to show through, and it will change the color. If that's what you're seeking, then have at it. Go ahead, use this process, and be creative. Okay, I have some holes, so I'm going to add a little more of the yellow. And of course, I do want it to go right off the edge. So let me get that complete so that this totally makes sense. No, you will not have another chance to get this particular look. If you change it, you'll have a different look. I'm going to take my popsicle stick and I'm going to just even out this green. It's getting a little out of control. I'm also going to blend the sides of what's dripping off the side of the canvas. Use them. See how my popsicle stick becomes very handy. Now, another point, if you're going to be using the same popsicle stick, you don't want to contaminate color. Or do you? But in my case, I don't want to contaminate the color, so I'm going to pick up a different popsicle stick and just fill in these holes. By not having any color on that popsicle stick, my yellow beach is going to stay just as pure as can be. Now that my beach is completely done, and this is going to dry, the way I set it down, if I don't want as much white that's as happening here with the wave, I can tilt it to dry. So that's up to you. As you play with this idea and these techniques, you will be creating your own masterpiece. Next thing I'm going to do is take the Indian yellow, and I'm going to put in some small drops, one on either side. Take my popsicle stick and just move these around. These are points of interest that sit on the beach. And the very last color I'm going to add is black. And very little. One drop. Okay, and one drop over here. Boom, that's it. Okay, again with my popsicle stick, I'm just going to pull it slightly. Now I've created some rocks on the beach. So now I have some rocks on the beach. I'm going to let this dry because in the drying process, It's acrylic paint, so it is going to change. Not only will it change in consistency, it will change in color. So my painting has completely dried, and you can see that my water has blended into my beach. I'm okay with that because the line of waves has stayed exactly where it's supposed to be. So that combination works. My sky has blended out. Now, how do you sign a painting like this if it has such a shiny surface? You can take a marker, magic marker, and sign with it, which you'll need to because regular paint won't stick to it. And then you can always sign it on the back. Now that you've learned this technique, you can take it a step further and do many things. One is pour another layer. This painting is called Silent Strength. I used the same technique to create a sky, water, and beach. But the additional thing I did with this is I added another layer of sky. Wasn't quite happy with the way it looked. Now, if you do this, know that you're going to have a lip right here. So you can see that this is flat, and then you've got a lip with the second pouring. Now, how do you resolve that issue? You'll take varnish, just like you would seal a painting, and seal over the entire painting. That will blend in your layers. Now, it won't blend in very thick layers, but it certainly will blend thin layers. Another fun, exciting thing that you can do with this recipe that you now have in your toolbox is to leave the mixture clear. Don't put any paint color in it, and use it as a coating or a varnish. Paint over an existing painting that you've painted with regular paint on canvas, like this one. What will happen is it will give you a very shiny, unique surface, and everyone's going to ask you, how did you do that? The other thing to note, when you do this, it will take away some of that three-dimensional feel, meaning it will seem a little flatter. But the shiny surface is so exciting, you owe it to yourself to try it at least once.